And during the session, we had a lot of people from Brownwood come down. If you guys have seen our board down there and stick pins in it. And we had hundreds and hundreds of people show up, the most out of any office. So you guys did really good. Our district did good. In the back here, Zach Maxwell is my chief of staff. Connie Vick is our district director. Our intern is Sonny. And Julie over here, of course, everybody knows her as our treasurer. So appreciate you guys being here also. I'm going to go over some slides real quick and then answer some questions at the end. And I'll be able to stick around for somebody that can stay past. I think it's 1 o'clock, isn't it, that you guys pretty much shut it down?
Yeah.
Okay. And that way we'll hold off because I've tried to take these slides down to about 30 or so, but there's a little bit of everything in here for everybody, I hope. Before we start real quick, the committees I was on, criminal jurisprudence, that was one I wanted also. Special purpose districts was another one I asked for. And then I was on the subcommittee too, and it got pretty hectic and we had long days, but once again, I'm honored to serve everybody here, and I'm honored to serve the district. Legislative process 101, this is just a quick slide here. Of course, we were in session for 140 days. We're going back for a special session that the governor called, dealt with for 30 days. 6,800 bills were filed in both House and the Senate, so that's quite a lot of bills there. 1,220 will be sent to the governor. I believe he vetoed at least 50 by now, and he'll probably veto some more. And just for the people that call into our office, we still get calls today of wanting us to vote for certain bills that are already passed and signed. But just so you hear the designations, the HB is for House bill, SB is for Senate bill, and if there's not a companion in the House and the Senate sends us a bill, then somebody gets to sponsor that bill on the House side and vice versa. The budget, which is the biggest thing, $216.8 billion. I have $217 billion up here. We stayed below population plus inflation, which is very good. It's a very conservative budget. The first budget that came out, we had 2.5 in the ESF fund, which is a rainy day fund, $2.5 billion, which I thought was a little bit too much. In my opinion, that rainy day fund should be used for one-time expenses, which it was meant for, and it was since lowered to about $1 billion, $980 million, which ends up pretty good. Here's a graph or a pie chart of where we're spending our money. 80.4 billion on education, 79.5, so 80 billion between health and human services and education, majority of our budget. That's a huge amount of money for the state of Texas. And then if you get to transportation, you're looking at 32 billion, public safety right at about 12 billion. So you can see where a majority of our share goes to. Start with some public education notes. We maintain full funding for the enrollment growth. Many of you are aware of ASATAR. We have 40 school districts and HD 60, which is our district. And I believe 3 of them under ASATAR funding. And I'll just touch for the school people real quick. What we try to do is move ASATAR towards hardship grants. Now everybody knew, all the superintendents knew that ASATAR was going away in 2017. It started in 2006, I believe. So for the schools that didn't quite make it, the hardship grants will be partial funding for that ASATAR program. The TRS care, which we'll talk about later, $350 million with the TRS care, which is health care for the teachers. That's going to come out of the rainy day fund as one of the major portions from that. Higher education, total formula funding went up almost $23 million for community colleges. Let's go here, I don't want to run out of time, but women's health. We defunded Planned Parenthood finally, and alternatives to abortion, and there are agencies that apply to the state for alternatives for abortion, and we can spend up to about $38 million for that. And what those, can everybody hear me? What those programs are for is women that think they're pregnant are part of it, women that are pregnant are part of it, and then women and children up to 2 years old are part of that program. So it's pretty good as far as taking care of the woman and the infant and the child. Mental health, I have to brag on Dion a little bit here. I use Dion as like the model for people that would come in and talk about mental health. Because Dion's done a great job here in Brownwood, and you guys are very lucky to have him and his staff. And so with that, I did get a lot of folks, especially the sheriffs, police chiefs, that we talked about mental health being a problem. And in my opinion, the only way to fix that is on the front end before they get into this criminal justice program. Because, you know, you can't quantify it really, but you spend more on a person through mental health once they get into the system and all the way through than if we spent money up front. You'll show that you're spending a lot of money, but I guarantee it's going to be less money. So the mental health aspect of getting into mental health and criminal justice, if we spend it on the front end, we're going to be a lot better than we would be on the back end. Department of Family Protective Services, there'll be some slides through here with the FPS and CPS, and we put a lot of money into Family Protective Services and CPS and tried to change that up. It's going to start coming next session or next budget session. I think we still need to do more. More needs to be there, but we're on our way. Border security, there's another one that I think the federal government should be taking care of this. However, $800 million more this session is going into that. It's going to take care of 250 new troopers, and they'll keep their 50-hour work week. Next session, depending on what the president does, hopefully we can cut that way back and put that money somewhere else. There's also actually there was a bill brought up that we were going to make the federal government pay for last session's $800 million, and that never really went anywhere, but it'd be more of a resolution. We know that it's hard to get money out of the federal government. Public school accountability. For the administrators in here, for the schools, you used to have 5 domains. Change that to 3 domains, and change the domain places underneath that, or what that's going to entail. The A through F is there to stay. That's going to be the grading period for the school districts. I think this is a lot better setup than before. It takes the good schools, and we have really good schools in our district. And what was happening is if you scored a 93 last time, and then you scored a 93.2, you're still doing really good, but you didn't show any growth, so you got graded down on that. And I think once you have a good school and you can maintain that, I think that you should deserve a high grade for that. And those are just the 3 domains that are in here. And I can go over this. I have a meeting after this with one of the superintendents, and we'll talk more about that, and I can answer more questions later on this too. Child protection, this goes with foster care, and the next slide here is kindership care. And what we're moving for in the CPS, foster care, and that whole realm is we're trying to put everything together under one system, so you don't have DFS doing one thing, CPS doing the same thing, and you're having different groups doing the same thing. We're trying to organize it and make it a better run institution. Kinship care is one of the things that I think is great. Before, you have children that get taken out of the home, and if they can go to a home with a grandmother, grandfather, an aunt, an uncle, a brother, a sister, it's much better for the child. Much better. But what happened was, if you were kin to the people, you wouldn't get paid. Now you can get paid if you have a different, depending on what your income level is, depends on how much you get for that child being in your care. So it's a step towards the right direction. We'll see how it goes this upcoming session with it, this upcoming 2 years, but I think it's a step in the right direction. And that goes into more flexibility. I was talking about PFPS and CPS. And it's just the legislation allows for investigations of child abuse to be consolidated under one area. Sanctuary cities, you guys have heard a lot about that, especially if you guys have been paying attention to the last day of session when everything got out of hand, and people have asked me questions about it. And yes, I was there. I was on the floor, and I'll explain kind of what happened. There were about 350 people in the gallery up above, and most of y'all have been down to Austin. And very last day, Senate Bill 4 was already passed and signed, and people started yelling and screaming and bringing up banners. Well, you can't have that, so the speaker gavelled and said, clear the gallery. Well, when they tried to clear the gallery, DPS came in, and they had, you've seen there's 4 sections, north, south, east, and west. And they bring up banners, the protesters. And DPS would come down and try to pull the banners, and there was tugging matches going on. And it was it's a situation that shouldn't happen, but it did. And we had people from the floor, representatives from the floor, cheering them on. Well, when you get DPS involved and they're trying to clear the gallery, that's a bad thing. That shouldn't happen. So there was some pushing and shoving on the floor and things going on, and one of the representatives called ICE, and they were chanting, we're illegal, we're here to stay, basically you can't do anything about it. And it just, in the face of the whole bill and everything, and I'm not saying you can't petition your government, because that is a right, you should be able to petition your government. But in that case, it went beyond what you should have done. Back to some mental health. HB 13 and HB 2895 is just some matching grant programs. And when we do matching grant programs, it is what it is. It's a matching program, meaning the state gives some money, and then whatever taxing entity gets it, they give some money. And a lot of times that's referred to as an unfunded mandate. Folks, it's not an unfunded mandate. Yes, if it's meant and said that you must do that, but if it's a grant program and it's helping out your community and you have to pay 50% instead of 100%, I consider that a win for the state and a win for the community, because the state's giving the community 50% that they wouldn't have had before. But if you're in office and let's say I'm a commissioner, I've been in office for 4 years, and I'm underneath one of these grant programs, and then a new commissioner comes in and says, why is the state only paying 50%? They should be paying this whole thing. Well, not really. The grant program's there to help out and help the communities out. It's not supposed to be 100% funded. Some things should be, and that's a true unfunded mandate. But there are differences on what are actually an unfunded mandate and what isn't. And I'll get into that in a little bit too. Public safety. You guys have heard this on the news, just like police shootings. Once there's an inappropriate relationship between a teacher and a student, it's viral, whether it's on Facebook or whether it's on the nightly news, whatever you watch at this time. And we're trying to curtail some of that. And I talked to some of the administrators about Pass the Trash, and they don't want to be sued because they have, here you have a problem, and let's say somebody's been accused of something, of inappropriate behavior. Well, you're not convicted yet. So there's a difference between being accused and actually being convicted, and what you do with the person in the meantime, and what is their status. Do you end up firing that person? What is a school district supposed to do about it? So this just helps with the reporting, what you need to do, and everybody's innocent until proven guilty. And that's what we have to remember. So, sometimes you have clear-cut evidence, and sometimes you don't. But that's going to help out a lot, help the school districts a lot in determining that gray area between accusing and actual being arrested for it and then convicted for it. Election integrity. HB 25 eliminates the straight party voting in Texas. Nothing to do in the primary, it's just the general. So in 2020, when you go into the voting in the general election, you won't be able to mark check Republican or check Democrat and then walk out. You'll have to go down the list. Now you can vote for all Republicans, you can vote for all Democrats, You can switch up back and forth like you can now, but it's not that straight, one punch and you're done. Voter ID law, that's still the same thing. You have ID, whether it's photo ID. Now you can use certain types of non-photo ID with an affidavit. So, you know, when I was in law enforcement, and I'll use that frequently because I was there for 30 years, and I would ask for identification of somebody if I had reasonable suspicion or somebody was doing something. Most everybody has identification. And when you talk to people and you say, do you have identification? I look at it in a different way, saying, what do you mean? You don't think I have identification? Do you not think I'm a regular citizen, a real person? And that's what I used to get, and not the opposite of, oh, that poor person, he doesn't have ID, or she doesn't have ID. But I'm telling you, most everybody has ID to vote, and I look at it the opposite way that most folks look at it. So I think it's integral as far as anything you do, whether it's banking, anything. I think you should have ID, especially nowadays. TRS care, there's a lot of things that go into TRS care up here. We can have a whole talk just on this. But the main thing is, for most people, is the $350 million two-year solvency for TRS care, which is their health care. Now, some of their deductibles have gone up. Some of your deductibles have gone up. Mine have gone up. So as far as health care goes, in my opinion, it's just out of control, the cost that everybody's paying, not just the state. Pro-life was one of the only freshmen to make a motion to instruct the conferees. That was on SB 1, which is alternatives to abortion. And what the conferees do is they get together with 5 members from the House, 5 members from the Senate and House, and they talk about the bill and the amendments that were attached to the bill. And the House tries to keep everything they put in there as an amendment. The Senate tries to keep everything they put there as an amendment. And they work it out, and then the House says okay, and the Senate says okay, and then the bill goes to the governor's desk. If one says no, they won't accept it, then it could die right there. So that was part of the pro-life situation. Partial birth abortion ban was part of the omnibus pro-life bill, and that basically prohibited the method of dismemberment abortions. Veterans Affairs, how am I doing on time, Rick?
You're good, you're good.
Veterans Affairs, of course, we did a little bit more for the buy-in for the veteran, for home ownership, and Veterans Assistance Programs for local communities and address veterans' needs. We've done a lot of that all the way through for years and years. We've got several veterans that are in the House. Matt Schaefer, Representative Schaefer's a veteran, and Tony Tinnerholt's a veteran. And I lean on those guys when it comes to veteran bills to say, is this a good veteran bill? Is this going to be good for veterans and their families? And when you have people that have been in there, been in combat, and have done those things, that's the people I'm going to talk to for it. So I lean on them pretty heavily when it comes to veteran affairs. Religious liberties, SB 24 protects the subpoenaing of religious sermons and any administrative proceedings, which should have been done a long time ago. Some of these things in years past you would say, we don't even need a law for this. Why does there even need to be a law? But nowadays, there needs to be a law for some of these things. Second Amendment, I was joint author on HB 1911, and that stayed in committee, got stuck in the General Calendar's committee. But some of these things passed. It's now $40 for renewal for license to carry instead of $140. 32 caliber used to be the smallest caliber you could use. Now you can use 22. And we repealed the prohibition on knives, because if you can carry a gun, then you should probably be able to carry a knife. And I'll just let you know that most knifing incidents are steak knives from the home. That's where people get cut the most in domestic disturbances. So just in 30 years of experience, that's where your knives come in. And we don't want to outlaw them from the home, that's for sure. Ethics reform, we did a little bit of that. Some of this has to do with ERS retirement for state people, and you know, if you're convicted of a felony and you go to jail, you can have your retirement taken away. If you're married, your spouse still gets your retirement. Your estate can still get your retirement, but that person will not end up getting their retirement. Spans financial disclosures and some of the things that the legislators and judges have to do. And if you don't know, and Judge West, you were in here somewhere. When it comes to elections, there's different rules. There's similar rules, but there's different rules for judges that they have to follow than just legislators do, or the county clerk or something like that. This kind of evens the playing field that the judges can do a little bit more as far as donating certain entities or doing certain things with their campaign. This goes into campaign funds. It stops, like if I decided to retire someday, or I don't get reelected, I hope I do, but I can't go straight into being a lobbyist and give all my money to somebody that's in my campaign account. That just keeps somebody that's been there for a long, long time, that has $1 million, $2 million, $5 million in their account, from becoming a lobbyist and giving it to certain people. So it makes sense. It's a good deal. You should have a waiting period at least before you do that. So a lot of things to keep the legislators under control. A lot of good things. Law enforcement legislation. Did back to blue plates. This is another one of these grant programs. And I know there's a grant program for police officers' bulletproof vests. In Hood County, it's a 50% match. I don't know if they use them here in Brown County for patrol vests. Tony, you guys use it, I guess. What this does is, you know, we like to pay 100%, but we just can't. But what this does is it takes the level 4, not just a patrol vest, but the SWAT vest that you wear, the heavy-duty vest, the ballistic vest. And when you have the shootings like they did in Dallas, or shootings they have, and they could be anywhere nowadays, folks, when your officers get to the scene, the vest that costs a lot of money, the state's going to pay for 50% of those too. Article 5, Convention of the States. Governor signed that. That was one of the governor's main priorities. We were, I believe, now the 12th state to be on board with that. A lot more states will follow now that Texas is involved with this Article 5, Convention of the States. And basically what the Convention of the States does is tells the federal government what they need to do, what they should be doing already with a balanced budget, things like that. Some people say if they don't do it now, what makes you think they're going to do it then? But it's just another tool to help push the federal government to do what they need to do. Other conservative victories, demotivating discriminatory trade practices. So everybody that basically is against Israel, we won't trade with. American laws for American courts, that's oops. That's another thing here, that why should we have a bill that has American laws for American courts? And it's because Sharia law. It's coming into city councils, not in Texas, but it's just more of a preemptive thing to say, this is how Texas is going to be. This is how Dallas. But it's really not in Dallas, but there are city councils that are based not on the laws of the United States. And you know, we have our own constitution in Texas, and of course our nation has a constitution. And that's what we need to go by. Local bills. Now all these other bills help the counties, the district, the entire state. We've had some local bills that we passed through. The Palo Pinto Hospital District bill, and you know, just as simple as changing the voting from 2 years to 3 years and putting them on a different cycle for their hospital board. We created 2 municipal utility districts in the city of Crescent, which is Hood County. Named a bridge, co-authored the license, lower the reduction fee for a license, Weatherford Junior College District. That's a strange one in Hood County. It leaves it up to the commissioners whether they want to do anything they want to do about it, because that's a local issue. But what they had a problem with in Hood County was there wasn't going to be any representation. So if Weatherford College moved into Hood County, they wanted a seat at the board, and that's all it does for them. The commissioners vote on whether they want to do that or not. Disillusion Central Colorado River Authority, which was out of Coleman, and Coleman City Council, everybody in Coleman wanted that done, so that was taken care of. Of course, the one here in Brownon, the attorney donation program, that died in committee and general calendars. Todd Hunter's chairman there, and it died along with hundreds of other bills. We attempted to get that on to as an amendment to some other bills, but it was really tricky because it had a judicial aspect to it and a county aspect to it, and there wasn't a bill that was germane enough to get that on as an amendment. And then I co-authored, unfunded mandates. That was a great one for the schools. And I'll tell you a little bit about that one. There was about 28 unfunded mandates, and I joint authored this with Representative Biederman. And what it did is TASB was behind it, Texas Association of School Boards was behind it, TASA was against it, Texas Association of Administrators. And if we have administrators in here, I'm not downing you, it's just what it is. But what the bill stated was there was about 28 unfunded mandates for the school. And it didn't have anything to do with the safety of the kids or the safety of the teachers, but it took away unfunded mandates that the state had given for administrative purposes. So TASB was like, hey, this is great, and it was a 2-year period. And TASA was like, no, we don't want this because we're going to have to let off a lot of our administrators, and then if this program doesn't work, in 2 years we'll have to hire them all back. So this is where unfunded mandates kind of get sticky. It's the state says you're going to have to do this, but if the state tries to pull back, then your local officials are like, either pull back or don't. So we're going to have to get into that discussion of, when we talk about unfunded mandates, do we really want them? And if we really want them, let's not make it a trial period, let's just go ahead and do it. So, that's going to be something that the school district is going to have to look at, the legislature is going to have to look at, and when it comes down to school finance, there is not one person who's an expert on school finance. Not one superintendent, not one legislator, nobody. There's books and books and volumes of regulations and rules and all kinds of different golden pennies this and copper pennies that, and it needs to be simple. I had a legislator that was there 20 years tell me, Mike, he says, you're coming down here and you're going to try to fix school finance? Can't do it. He said, we've had that problem for 20 years, as long as I've been here. And I said, well, there's got to be a simpler way. I said, I go to my superintendents and I say, hey, how much money do you need? You throw me out a figure. Is it $10,000 a student? Is it $15,000? Is it $100,000 a student? I can't get a figure. We've got to have something to start with, because the state, you can go back to that first graph, $80 billion. We've got to go back to not a formula, but a certain percentage that the state gives. And then anything after that, the school district can kick in. And it should be enough that the rich districts don't have to Robin Hood and the poor districts have enough. Because when you start throwing in all those formulas, it's bad for everybody. And we're here for the students, number one. And who takes care of the students? The teachers. And who's responsible for the students? The parents. So those are the three that need to be in that mix every time. Now the special session. I talked to some of you guys about the special session. Main thing we have to do is number one up there, the sunset legislation, mostly for the medical boards, and that will get done. Now this whole list of the 19 others, who knows how long that's going to take. That's going to be up to the leadership in the Senate. It's going to be up to the leadership in the House. And to give you a little background on the Senate and the House, there's 31 senators, and the Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, presides over the senators. Lieutenant Dan Patrick is elected how? He's elected by everybody in the state. Everybody in the state votes for lieutenant governor just like they do governor. The leader of the House is Joe Strauss. Joe Strauss is elected by
The House.
150 members of the House. So when people tell me there's a big difference between the Senate and the House, here's the big difference. Big difference is one's elected by 150 representatives that have conservative districts, liberal districts. They border back and forth between conservative and liberal. And then you have a Senate that has somebody that's elected by everybody in the state. Now, our district alone in the primary, District 60, our 8 counties, voted 41% in the primary for Ted Cruz and almost 30% for Donald Trump. That was in the primary. In the general election, we had 84% vote for Donald Trump. I had chairman of Tracy King, Zach, chairman of, can't think of it right now, but he looked at me and he goes, I just looked at your bio. And he goes, I knew you were conservative. But he said, and he's a Democrat, he's a conservative Democrat, and we get along great. And he said, but do you realize you had 84% of your people vote for Trump? And I said, I do. And he goes, now I know why you're conservative. I said, well, that's our district. I said, you vote your district. But, I don't know if I have any more slides. But, no, this is the last one. I'll leave that out there because I think most people have questions with the special session. But I'll open it up real quick for questions.
Is this information available on the Texas website?
No, but we'll try to put it on. We'll try to put it on our state website on all this. She asked if any of this was available on our website. We'll try to get all this up on our website. I was telling a story earlier about Democrats, Republicans, and conservatives and whatnot, and I serve on criminal jurisprudence. And Barbara Gervin Hawkins is another freshman member, and she's very, very liberal, nice lady. We get along great. She came to me and on our committee and said, hey, look, I knew you were in law enforcement for 30 years. How are you going to vote on this issue? And we talked about the issue, and I said, well, for me, I'm going to vote no on this issue. But for you, you're going to vote yes. You want to just try to get and wrangle the votes, but knowing her and knowing how her district is and the way she's going to vote, I was like, for you, that's the best vote because this is how I feel, this is how you feel. But when you come to people and sit and know where they're from and understand where everybody's coming from, you make relationships, and further down the line, we're friends, so hopefully we can work across the aisle back and forth. Yes, sir.
Relating to that House Bill 2273 that didn't make it, can you give some background on how many counties can use that and how many have used it? And is it a statewide thing? I'm kind of confused on it. It appears that not many people use that fund. Can you clear that up? Not anymore.
It has been used in a couple of years, and I hand it to the Hood County delegation that came down. Commissioner Worley and your county attorney that came down. They did a great job in helping out. Judge West, everybody came down there. They were for the bill. It just didn't make it out, but there were 6 counties involved in that aspect. And that was done in 2007, and I think last time it was used was 2015, at least here. I don't know about the other counties, but it's something that just needs to be off the book, and we're going to try the next time, if we're blessed to get back in, that we're going to do some of getting rid of some legislation too, not just trying to add legislation.
What was 2273?
2273 was a Brown County diversion program that was allowed in 6 counties total. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
We have a huge problem with water as far as availability of resources. we have a huge population influx. And if you look mathematically going into the near and or far future, we are going to we don't have the resources for the population, whether it's people that are coming here in the next week or the next 10 years. I don't know whether or not there could be, even infrastructure, schools, everything that does get taxed with influx of population growth here, or just if it's just regular growth rate in Texas. EPA-wise, if we could do some sort of lawsuit to the EPA to say we need to stop this, any type of influx or population to slow down. We don't have the resources.
Right, we don't have the resources. I don't know if you're going to get the population to slow down, but there is a water plan. State water plan is done every 5 years. This year, 2017, basically, they came up with a new water plan. It is a good one. It speeds some things up with aquifer storage and things like that. I was just at a meeting last week in Possum Kingdom, which is Palo Pinto County, part of our district. We talked about a new reservoir that's being added down in Houston, and it's going to get that done. And that's the problem with the EPA and the TCEQ. The EPA and the TCEQ are basically the same thing. TCEQ is for Texas, of course, and EPA is for the federal government. So yes, that's part of the problem. We need to get them out of the way. But when you talk about just because downstream you have a certain type of muscle that it's going to affect, we've got to come to a realization that 1 million more people are more important than that one muscle, in my opinion. But you have groups out there that'll fight tooth and nail for that. So there is a state water plan. The rainy day fund addresses part of that, and loans are given to cities and counties and different municipalities for it. So there is one underway. It's just very time consuming. And the regulations they keep coming through TCEQ, which is a state agency, and the EPA. But that's the battle we're going to continually fight. Now, the Natural Resources Chairman this year, Lyle Larson, he's done some pretty good things in the committee. But if you see, I guess it was yesterday on the 50 bills that were vetoed, there were about 3 of his bills that were vetoed, and a couple of them were water bills. So brackish water and well capping was one of them too.
Did you ever see yourself running for the speakership?
Could I ever see myself running for the speakership? Let me tell you, if I did, it would be probably totally different than just looking at it from my point of view. It's a touchy subject, but I think the speaker has too much power. I think the power needs to go to the members and to the committees where it belongs. And when you do that, you empower the citizens. You don't empower, a team of, 5 or 6 people. So I think it'd be a little bit different. I think the rules need to change as far as the House rules. And that could change with different committees and things like that. Where you run into a problem is, and I'm not a lifelong career politician at all. I didn't come down here to stay 20 years. I came down here to try to solve problems, whether it's school finance, things like that. But seniority helps and seniority hurts because you get stuck in a certain mode, I think, if you've been there too long. But going back to the rules, if you have a calendars committee, a general calendars committee, and a local calendars committee, and there is no transparency on how you vote, and you can tag individuals' bills, that's wrong. Because what I do is if I'm sitting in committee, in criminal jurisprudence committee, my votes are out there for everybody to see, as they should be. And if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I've got a bill coming through your committee, I talk to that person. And I say, I'm going to vote for your bill. It's a great bill. Or I'm going to say, I'm not going to vote for your bill. And they'll say, how can we change it up? And most of the time you go, change these 2 things right here. And if you file that bill, I'll vote for it. And they do most of the time. Sometimes they don't. Or some bills come to you and say, look, I'm just not going to vote for the bill because it's a bad bill, plain and simple. And there are bad bills. So that's how you should act. And I think every vote you take in committee, whether it's calendars committee, whether you're on natural resources, ought to be open to the public. And there should be no tagging of individual bills. Any other questions?
Mike, what's your feeling on item number 6, the property tax reform?
You know, property tax reform was big in regular session, and it got Bonin. Representative Bonin did a really good job, I think, of trying to take care of all the parties involved. But that version didn't come out, and there were a couple of amendments that he was going to take on that bill. But I've knocked some doors in Hood, and we were just in Coleman for a little bit. But that and the bathroom bill are the biggest two I hear on, left and right, just hands down. And if you look at the property tax bill, property tax reform, it affects 3 counties. It affects none of my cities. The way it was written initially, it affected Hood, Palo Pinto, and Brown. And basically what they were trying to do is say, look, through the Senate side, is it got down to 5% cap. And, I have counties right now that are saying, we're doing budget right now, and we don't know what to expect through the state. We're going to have to kind of hold off. And my answer to them, one of the commissioners, was, are you going to raise taxes 5%? Because if you're going to raise taxes 5%, I think your people need to know. Well, they're not going to raise taxes 5%. They're just waiting. And who knows what's going to come up in special session, if there's going to be an automatic rollback once you hit a certain percent, if it's you can have to petition for it. But when it comes down to it, the state does mandate certain things that the county has to do. The county needs the flexibility, or the states need the flexibility. Where does that lie? I'm always on the conservative side. So if you're a county and let's say the rate's set 5% and you have an automatic rollback, that's going to cost the county money just to have it. If the governor declares your county emergency, then that won't take effect. And I'm going on what was said in the bill in the regular session. It may be a total 180 that we see come out in special session. So when it comes to lowering taxes, I'm all about lowering taxes. And people have to realize, and when I worked in county government, my wife's county clerk in Hood County, you get one side. And I listen to that one side of unfunded mandates this, unfunded mandates that. And there are some. There really are. And those are the ones that the state needs to pay for. Not 50%, but 100%. But when it comes, I'll get you one second. When it comes down to the other unfunded mandates, and I'm sitting in committee, and I have the County Attorneys Association, the DA's Association, the Sheriff's Association, all from these counties saying they want this certain bill, and that bill has a $2 million fiscal note on it, and then that bill passes, and then you send it back to whatever commissioner's court there is, and they go, look, this is an unfunded mandate. So there are unfunded mandates, no doubt about it, but there's also self-imposed unfunded mandates is what I call them. So when you go down there, you have to look at both sides of it. Judge?
Representative, to give this body some idea of the profundity of the tax rate limitations. The county spends approximately $2 million a year on health insurance for its employees. We have been advised that our health insurance rates are going to go up about 10% because region-wide, statewide, the claims have exceeded the premiums paid in. That is $200,000 more that the county is going to have to budget. And we have about a $10 to $12 million general budget each year. Do the math and you can see the problem.
And that is part of the problem when you're talking about health insurance and things like that. And that's what I'm saying. Some of these things, even in the criminal justice aspect of it, whether you're in probation, whether you are in the courts aspect of it, you're going to have unfunded mandates. But some of them aren't the true unfunded mandates. And if you have to reach that 5%, 6%, whatever they set it at, the state set it at 8% back when I was a kid, and that's when interest rates were, 19% for a car. So when that was set back then, that was fairly low. Now with interest rates, of course, they're rising up, 2%, maybe 3% for a car now, but, so it was different times. And I'm always under the impression, Judge, that, and of course, we'll sit down, we talk a little bit about it, but I don't mind the citizens voting. I really don't. I mean, it's hard on the commissioners. It's hard on me when I vote for certain things, and I'll get applause for some and I'll get nailed for others. But like I said, I'm there to do, I think, the conservative thing. And what I'm not trying to hammer the commissioners. That's just what I've seen in my committees. And you guys in Hood County both have been 100%, I mean, available and helping out. So I appreciate that. And these are the things that we need to go and talk about and see what it is. But when you have a Senate that pushes for one thing and then the House pushes for another, and we try to do a revenue cap on one, I know there's an amendment for $10 million for revenue, and I was always told there might be one that's higher than that. So, like I said, out of all our cities, all our counties, it affects 3. Will we ever get there? I don't know. It depends on the special session. It may end up being the way it is.
What is your feelings that you think is going to be the outcome on the bathroom bill?
The bathroom bill, there's no telling. I know Abbott, Governor Abbott, and Lieutenant Dan Patrick are on the opposite side of what Joe Strauss is, and really to me it's a no-brainer. If you actually read the bill, please go read the bill. It has nothing to do with private companies that you guys run. It has to do with state schools and things like that, and government entities. And basically, it goes by biological. And right now, I haven't heard anything in our areas, our district, that there's any problems. If there's any problems, there's usually accommodations made. But everything goes back to biological. And I think Ray wants us to end on that note. But I'll be around, so if you guys have more questions, please come up and ask.
Express my appreciation for you taking time to come down and talk to everyone. I know everyone in the room don't always see eye to eye on the issues that you guys are dealing with, and so I appreciate you being open. What you do is not easy, and I don't envy you, and I would probably never want to do it. So I just wanted to give you a token of our appreciation from the
Thank you
community.
very much.
And thank you for what you've done so far.
Thanks, Ray. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.